Hi there. This video is a guide and review of skiing at Telluride, Colorado for the average person out there that's looking to go, and me 5 years from now when I inevitably forget. We're going to cover everything from getting to the mountain, to getting around the mountain, to eating on the mountain, and the various lift areas. I went in February 2022 with my friends Andrew and Karthik, and we were treated to 4 near-perfect bluebird days in that time. We're no experts, but I can manage to at least get down double blacks with a camera strapped to me, and you all can benefit from that footage. First off, Telluride is not located next to a major city. Yes, it's Colorado, but not Denver. That would be a 7-hour drive. Instead, your choices are fly directly to the Telluride airport and pay about 3 times inflated plane ticket prices, or do what we did and fly to Montrose, Colorado. That's normal-ish ticket prices and then an hour-and-a-half drive. You can rent a car or take one of many shared or private car services. I'd rate this drive as moderate difficulty. It has some elevation to it, and it's often a 2-lane mountain road that you wouldn't want to be on when it was a snowstorm, but it doesn't have the extreme tunnels or challenges that you can see with I-70, for example. Unfortunately, in complete contrast to my experience in Bozeman, Montana, if you saw my recent video about Big Sky, the Montrose airport was a freaking mess when we arrived. It's a tiny place already with only a few gates, and it's currently under construction, so the baggage claim is currently a tent in a parking lot, not to mention the huge line out the door to check bags for departing flights that some poor souls were suffering through. But enough about that. The resort itself has a sprawling main base kind of up on the mountain, about 800 feet above the actual town of Telluride. This area is extremely commercialized with exclusively modern hotels and homes. It's big enough that they actually made a series of free gondolas just to use as public transportation. The mountain village is the main area, and it has a gondola to a free parking lot, as well as what they call a chondola, which is a lift with some chairs replaced by gondola carriages to get to the Meadows base area down the road, back and forth. The mountain village is pretty much everything you'd expect from a fancy, pricey ski resort base, and if you have the cash, it'd be a very convenient place to stay. The mountain snow report breaks up the areas by lift, and for the most part, I'm going to follow that. The main non-gondola lift from the base is called the Village Express, and actually none of the Telluride lifts outside those for public transportation show off any fancy technology. They range from pretty standard detachable high-speed quads to slow double chairs. This one is a pretty respectable high-speed quad that serves terrain between double green and double blue difficulty. I guess they figured if double black is a thing, that they can make double green and double blue things too, so you'll notice those distinctions on the trails. Being the most accessible of all areas of the mountain, this place is certainly going to be one of the more crowded, but despite that, it's hard to argue with a quick lift that's open all day and servicing long, wide, open, groomed blue trails, in addition to some ungroomed and mogul. We found ourselves coming back here time and again after foraying into other areas, often ending the day here. In particular, Misty Maiden is one of those best runs at the resort, just for the joy of being able to utilize that massive space without worrying about the snow conditions. This area is a very safe bet for the average skier to have a great time. One small negative I'll point out at this point is that staff check your pass every time you board one of these base lifts. And for some reason they can't scan the RFID chips in Epic passes, only the visible barcode. So you actually need to take your pass out of your jacket for them to scan it like you're in line at the grocery store every single time you get in line. It's pretty embarrassing for them, if I'm honest, and it kind of contributes to my feeling that this mountain has below average tech. The other major area accessed directly from the resort base is the Sunshine Express lift. It's also a detachable high-speed quad, but is still over a 10-minute ride simply because of how much distance it covers. It's also a bit awkward to get to, especially if you're staying in Telluride itself. Your options are to take the long Village bypass run from Village Express or enter from above via the Prospect Bowl, which already required a lot of effort to get to in the first place. And once you're skiing Sunshine, the only way out is to take the Chandala at the base or the Ute Park lift at the top back into Prospect. Sunshine Express also has a lot of acreage, but not a lot of runs. In contrast to the Village Express, it's almost entirely for beginners. They call all these runs double greens, but I think that's being generous, as they're very easy. You could probably spend all morning with someone new here and only complete 2 of these really long runs. They're all long and flat. Great for learning to ski and for making room for giant, expensive houses.
I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. Say rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich.
All that being said, there are a few notable exceptions that might make you want to check this area out. The farthest left run on the map is called Sundance and does briefly have some great open blue portions, though they don't last long in comparison to the length of the whole run, unfortunately. The real star is the area they call the Enchanted Forest, just to the right on the top of the lift. This is a pretty extensive blue glades area with both interweaving cleared trails and plentiful trees to play in. It was fun enough that we went back a few times and is by far the best part of the Sunshine area. Unfortunately, it's only a small percentage of your run, and the rest is pretty boring. The woods also have a surprise double black nestled in on one side there called Runaway Train. This was short, but a nice contrast to the greens that dominate this area. Really a solid option for someone wanting to just try out a challenging run there, as it's pretty short.
Say rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. I'm rich, I'm rich.
Sticking with the bases before we move higher, your other option for lodging outside the main resort is the actual town of Telluride. The government must be doing something to heavily limit what kind of expansion can be made, because the town is actually quite quaint still. It has that small ski town kind of vibe, tons of stores, restaurants, some nightlife, total opposite of the mountain village, really. They have a free shuttle bus to get around, as well as their own free gondola that goes to that main resort base. It also makes a stop at a midway point where you can ski or visit a pretty exclusive restaurant. There's 2 other lifts that you can take up from this side too, and we stayed at an Airbnb right at the base of one of them. That was what they call Lift 7. We really had a hard life on this trip, honestly.
It's cold. And I'm barefoot. But I have adult beverages. Yeah, guys. They have bathing suits.
Well, that's what you think, but
Can we see the lift from here? Yeah. Oh, what'd you do? You broke it.
Anyway, Lift 7 goes to roughly the same point as that gondola midway station. It's a slow, small double chair that we only took to start our day. I wouldn't recommend going and checking it out if you didn't have any other reason to. It only has a few runs under it. Mostly single blacks with a long mogul double black repeatedly crossed by this blue switchback catwalk, which serves as the easiest way down. The third and final lift coming from the town is the Oak Street lift, which is very short, closes very early, exclusively serves difficult terrain, and is basically only useful to get you to the Plunge lift from the base. I don't really see any reason to ride it. The big thing to be aware of with the town side is that there's no greenway down. The runs on this side would be extremely intimidating to beginners, so you might need to be prepared to ride the free gondola down if you stay here and you're with new folks. Additionally, while the runs might be some people's cup of tea, we found these steep faces under both lifts to get skied off very quickly, even when groomed, and the sun only rarely hit here when it coated other parts of the mountain the whole day. We only skied these areas for getting back to the Airbnb. Not really recommended beyond perhaps some runs in the morning. Similar story with the Plunge lift that's also on this face of the mountain, though this lift is much longer, both distance and time-wise. It's by far the longest ride at Telluride at about 12.5 minutes on a normal speed lift. Nearly all of its runs are black or double black, and it suffers from that same low light, high chance of being skied off setup that the others over here do, but if you're looking for moguls and small crowds, you might like it. I had high hopes for Lookout, which is the only double blue in this area, but because of that status, it was very high traffic and got skied off perhaps the fastest of all these runs, though generally it's the type of run I really like. Overall, the Plunge area is hard to recommend for an extended stay with its slow lift and difficult terrain, but it's worth checking out if you want a challenge for part of your day or just a mountain completionist. The highlight for me was the run all the way on the side called Bushwhacker. Caught it a few times early on with fresh grooming, and it was pretty impressive, though quite steep for much of it.
Heard about you, you know about me. Already enough not to lose the game. No, nobody not to lose the game. No, nobody not to lose the game. Not to lose the game. Not to lose the game. Lose the game. Lose the game. Lose the game. Not to lose the game.
Moving up one tier to the middle of the resort is the Polar Queen Express area. This lift is a relatively short, high-speed quad covering exclusively blue and double blue terrain. I went into my visit expecting this to be one of my favorite areas because of that, but ended up feeling a little mixed. On the plus side, it has some great wide-open blue terrain for the kind of turns that I love. The Star Polar Queen run in particular I'd call short but sweet, and pretty much this whole area had great light. You have multiple run choices and can dip in and out of different runs and glade areas frequently if you'd like. A downside to this area is that the runs are relatively short compared to other options at the mountain. This lift is also quite popular and easily accessible, so it had some of the bigger crowds we saw, though lines were never really more than a couple minutes. The Polar Queen run in particular did feel a little crowded at times, so I'd recommend switching things up with some of the other runs here too. Overall, this area is a good choice for intermediate skiers, those that are looking to advance from greens and double greens while being centrally located at the resort, but ultimately it wasn't my favorite, mostly due to crowds and run length. One other thing Polar Queen has going for it is that the Bon Vivants restaurant is located at the top of the lift, so let's take a minute to talk food at Telluride. On the spectrum of ski resorts with places to eat mostly at the base versus up on the slopes, I'm happy to report Telluride as one of the most versatile I've ever seen. There are a number of places selling food up on the slopes in addition to the bases, ranging from tiny huts with some snacks to full-scale, highbrow, bougie restaurants. One of these fancy places is Bon Vivant at the top of Polar Queen, as I said, and we ate here on one of our days. On the one hand, it's a gorgeous place with an impressive, if small, French menu. On the other, it's extremely expensive and it has very limited seating, so you needed to get there very early and wait in line for a spot. Worth a stop one day, but not as a habit. The other fancy lunch place is called Alpino Vino and serves an Italian menu with the same tiny, expensive, bougie vibe. I do give them credit for having an amazing name, though. We also ate twice at the Gorono Ranch under the Village Express lift. This is a very large eatery with an amazing outdoor area sporting many tables, chairs, and sometimes live music. The food was middle-of-the-road ski mountain basics, but with a nice efficient QR code and website-based ordering system in a pleasant atmosphere. I'd highly recommend this one. And on our 4th day, we visited Big Billy's restaurant at the base of the Sunshine Express lift. This was your basic small cafeteria-style ski mountain food place. Not particularly impressive, but fine for what it was. Obviously, we couldn't try everything on offer, but my takeaway was that the mountain is generally quite well equipped with food options. And a pro tip for those planning ahead, some of these places take dinner reservations or book special packages that you might want to look into before you arrive. They will be fully booked by the time you get there. But back to skiing. Off to the left of Polar Queen is the Apex lift, a relatively small area served by a slow but short regular speed lift. It offers a blue way down, but it's primarily good for accessing the handful of double blacks that go under it. All wooded or mogul areas that prove to be some of the toughest terrain we tackled all week. The alley run in particular is an intimidating chute, especially when looking at it from below.
Alice's, how do you pronounce that? Alice's Alley?
Yeah.
All right, for the record.
Alley.
It's for the GoPro in case they recover it off our corpses.
Good.
Dark humor. Oh boy. I thought we were going in the woods. Not my best idea ever. Oh, that's a log.
We were proud to have tackled these, but honestly there are plenty of other double blacks on the mountain that get more sunlight, so I wouldn't say these are a necessity. One thing I do want to call out is the run called See Forever. This run traverses the top of the ridge all the way from the top of the Revelation lift down to the top of lift 7, and the second half of it is classified as an Apex lift run. This comes across as just a catwalk, and it is on the first half, albeit one with an amazing view. But it shouldn't be written off that easily. The second half is a solid blue run with some nice wide open sections and a steady pitch, and it's always groomed as it's an important thoroughfare. You'll probably end up here at some point whether you want to or not, but it's still worth a mention. A surprisingly nice run. On the other side of Polar Queen is the Gold Hill Express. Like Apex, it connects to See Forever as a blue way down, but it primarily serves some intense double black and extreme runs. It's a quick high-speed quad, unlike Apex, I think mostly because it's a main artery of the mountain to get people back from the Prospect Bowl. In addition to the extreme runs below it, there's a number of what they call Gold Hill Chute runs, numbered 1 to 10, that are accessible via hiking off to the side. I wouldn't have done them anyway, but they were closed due to a lack of snow when I was there. We did try the Little Rose run off to the right from the top, which started with a really gorgeous open area that fed into what was ultimately a very small and steep choke point. This could have done with some more snow and fewer people, but I liked the extended distance from the tree line as a way to mix things up, especially from the other chutes that we skied. You almost certainly find yourself on the Gold Hill lift just to get around, but only experts will actually be trying the extreme runs under it. If you're into that, I think this has by far the best ratio of lift time to vertical feet of any lift on the mountain, going up nearly 1,500 feet in the 4-minute ride. The other thing that the Gold Hill lift is good for is getting to the Revelation Bowl. It's easy to miss on the main map as it's off the back of the ridge and has its own page. This small area has 5 named runs and 1 standard lift. And this Revelation lift is actually the highest lift at the resort, with the peak at 12,515 feet. Walking out from here is how you get to those Gold Hill chutes I mentioned earlier. Inside the bowl, you get a mix of moguls, ungroomed trails, and groomed trail. You first drop in by Majestic and Liberty Bell, but you can quickly cross over to other areas if you'd like, and from the top you can do the full runs. Silver Cloud is the main run, steep and straight under the lift, and it started the day groomed when we went. It did start to get skied off, but not nearly as bad as some of the plunge area runs by the town. You could really pick up speed on this run if you aren't careful, and it does not really flatten before the lift, so watch out. You do not want to go off the back of this area by accident. Also a mention for B's run on the side as the farthest over and so the least traveled. This mogul area had good snow, a unique view, didn't seem to be windy. Our days were gorgeous, but even in seemingly perfect weather, the ridge at the top of the Revelation Bowl where it connects up to Sea Forever got pretty intense with the wind a couple times. Must just be the geography of how the mountain funnels the weather up there. Overall, the weird location and exclusively black runs made the Revelation Bowl a pretty quiet area. But with a little of everything, it was one of my favorites, and I definitely recommend it for people who feel that single black runs are the right difficulty for them, because it has the greatest concentration of that specific type of run of anywhere at the resort. This whole area also offers a unique scenic view compared to the rest of the resort because it's on the other side of that main ridge, to the point that there's a viewing platform at the bottom by the lift. Definitely worth a stop if you're in the bowl.
Oh, here we go. This looks like fun. All right, who's ready for lunch?
One more run.
The last lift area is called the Prospect Bowl, served by the Prospect Express lift. The base of this is right next to the base of Gold Hill Express, making both of these some of the most remote areas to get to, at least 2 lift rides away from the mountain village and 3 from the town. Prospect is a pretty quick but lengthy high-speed quad, and I think the most unique area at the resort. Also, spoiler alert, my favorite. You have a lot of options when getting off the top of this lift. More than most of the rest of Telluride, it really feels like you can go almost anywhere amongst the many runs to the left and right. You get multiple double greens to the right and 2 long labeled blues to the left. But once you pick a side, you can weave in and out of the options. It's not as much single labeled runs and more of a big area where they loosely attach names. It's the kind of run area that I associate with quote-unquote going out west to ski.
Karthik!
Oh yeah, funny. Should we catch him?
Let's catch him.
Those 2 blues are called Sandia and Magnolia, and it seems that they alternate which one gets groomed each day. The only hiccup is a crowded, steep, and quickly skied off single drop-in point at the very start of these runs, but the other 98% of them is a lot of fun.
Uh-oh. Oh, crap. Oh. Lost my pole. That's what straps are for.
Off to the right with the greens is also a double blue with some moguls and a single black glades area called Prospect Woods. These glades are not easy, but were more forgiving than similar double blacks and pretty unique at the resort if you want that intermediate difficulty glades option. Their short length and placement on this lift with easy access to other types of runs makes them simpler to add in as a challenge when you're feeling up to it. And finally, Prospect is also the lift to take if you're looking to do some hiking. You can walk anywhere from a minute and 50 feet to however long it would take for the 1,000+ vertical up to Palmyra Peak. There's a special insert map for just this highest difficulty expert area that you get to by walking. And the Black Iron Bowl plus everything on the peak is accessed via the Prospect lift on the right. We wanted to check out at least some of this terrain, so we did 2 runs over here. Confidence is just to the side of the lift and is pretty much your standard steep mogul black run. The other run we walked out a couple of minutes but didn't go too far. It's hard to say exactly which run we were on because it's all basically just a lip that you drop off where you want, but it was one of the double black or extreme runs in the Black Iron Bowl. I think Lakeview or Westlake. In my opinion, this run was tied with the alley run earlier under Apex as the most extreme terrain we went on. The GoPro only sometimes does it true justice, but this got really steep. Even more on some of the run options we didn't choose, but I did look down.
Shit. Not messing around.
My advice here is don't underestimate this area if you venture into it. It's serious, even though these runs are pretty short. One gripe I have with Telluride is that the main peak, that Palmyra Peak you see on the maps and my videos, is only kind of part of the resort. It's exclusively extreme runs up there, and you need to complete a truly extreme hike to even get to them. The result is that it's effectively just there for show. Maybe the 0.00001% of people that ski professionally and have this kind of hiking training could get up there, but for the rest of us, it might as well not even have runs on it. That's kind of a bummer. I like to be able to get to the top of a mountain, even if I have to take the easiest way down. But overall, as I said, the Prospect lift and area is my favorite at the resort. Quick enough to be efficient, all types of run difficulties on offer, most terrain types, and far enough out there to have reduced crowds. As far as the mountain overall, I'd say Telluride comes across in 2022 as a place that's clearly used to an era of exclusivity and tailoring towards both a rich and high skill level clientele. Prices of most things are above average. There's more opportunity for purchasing special experiences and things like dining. They have their own airport, and there's a high percentage of double black, extreme hiking, etc. runs at the resort. They earn their brand a bit, as their location probably does lead to fewer crowds, but if you're going outside holidays as I do, I got the same short lines at many other mountains. They also earn it with food, in my opinion, as their selection is impressive. And while yes, we were lucky with Bluebird days, I also think even without that luck that the face angles relative to the sun are particularly good here, such that many runs are getting light for large portions of the day. That's important to me, and this was better than other mountains. I wish they would upgrade their technology and be able to scan RFID badges, and their lifts are pretty ho-hum. I'd like to see them add a tram or something so we could at least get high enough up on Palmyra Peak for a view and maybe to ski that single black Palmyra Basin run without having to hike for hours. Basically, they're going to need to keep up with the times if they want to keep their world-class status in coming years. But the terrain is of course extensive, and expert skiers should consider a trip, and you will enjoy it. Newer skiers can get a challenging experience at many mountains, and a trip here might be overkill if that's your whole group. Don't get me wrong, as it really is impressive, but the bar raises every year for ski mountains, and there's a lot of choices as the consumer. So my getting on here and telling you every mountain is perfect doesn't really help anyone, so I call out what they can improve. I don't think this one is likely to become my go-to mountain, but I'm glad I visited, and for what it's worth, we spent 4 days and ended up feeling that we had covered everything we wanted to in 3, but that was with perfect weather. In a pinch, you could actually get a feel for all the areas, even in 2 days if you wanted. If this video was helpful, please let me know. I'll try to make more like it in the future, and thanks for watching.
It's an otter on skis. Carter's getting the B-roll footage here for the making of video. This is the Chandala time lapse run. Son of a bitch.
What happened?
GoPro started time lapse.
He said.
Freaking! Don't say
the
it again.
word.
Don't
He
say
said the
it.
word,
Oh.
and it did
Stupid
the
voice
thing you didn't
recognition.
wanted it to do.
Didn't hear the wake word, but it did it anyway. Freaking thing.
Wow.
Should I go in the tube and take a time lapse? Son of a bitch.
If you're getting every...
GoPro start a time lapse.
Stop saying the word.
I know, it's my freaking fault.
Oh.
Stupid software.